So my name is Ankit Dikshit. I'm CEO at Meduit Labs, and today we are going to discuss how to build niche media. And as you all know, that it is not easy to build a media company at the first place. It is even more difficult to engage your audience if even if you have taken a chance to build a media company. It is really difficult to engage the audience, and it is near to impossible to monetize this audience. Uh, Today we have a very special guest with us, and who have not just launched and converted their passion into gaming into a media company, but has also engaged millions of audience for last decade, and now has also cracked the monetization model. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Nishant Patel, CEO of AFK Gaming, and Rakesh Ramchandran, Chief of Product Technology and user experience, who are with us and going to share their experience of building a niche media company, AFK Gaming. So, Nishant, Rakesh, how is the feeling?
Thanks for having us, Ankit. Very excited to be here and to share whatever we've learned so far. Always a pleasure conversing with you. So looking forward to this chat.
Yeah, likewise. Hello, everyone. I mean, Ankit and us, we chat almost weekly. So it'll be one of our other weekly chats, but for an audience. So looking forward to this one.
Great. Likewise, I'm looking forward to it too, Nishant and Rakesh. And always great to have have insights from both of you, and also from the larger AFK team. So before we move into this discussion deeper, Nishant, Rakesh would like to know from you that how did you decide? So on one side, it's good to have like I understand the love for gaming, but why media? So we would like to know that.
So the truth is, we didn't really start off as a business, right? To give you a little bit of background, I started off as a pro gamer. I did this during my college years, and at some point at around 2005, 2006, 2010, 11, I decided that maybe there's an opportunity on the other side, which is rather than playing, can we get on the business side of things and make a career out of this? Step one in that direction was to start a forum. So afkgaming.com initially just started off as a basic PHP forum, used help from a neighbor to build it out. The idea there was, can we build a community of like-minded people? And it really wasn't meant to be a business. It was just meant to be a side project, right? Along the way, Rakesh came on board. Rakesh actually came on board as my first investor turned co-founder. And, around then we decided that, maybe there's a real business opportunity here. Can we turn this into a full-time thing? We tried everything, right? So from a forum, we tried organizing tournaments, we tried running teams, we tried content creation, we tried everything, right? And then at some point we realized that content creation is our forte and our area of expertise, and it's what excites us the most. So we doubled down on it and said, can we build the world's go-to destination for quality esports and gaming content? So I would say this is more of an outcome rather than a conscious decision that, hey, media is the best opportunity. It's just something we enjoyed the most and decided to follow that path.
To add on to that, there was also a problem that we needed to address, right? Back in 2008 to 2012 era, when we as gamers, right, we always knew that there was a gaming scene out there in India, but we always struggled to find information. For example, Nishant is a pro player, but other than his close circuit of 30, 40 friends, nobody knew that, hey, there are these great players out here in India. And then we decided, okay, our generation is past, and then at least the future generation of gamers, there needs to be somebody to tell their stories, right? Like if there's accomplishments happening, if there are events happening in India, if there's cool stuff happening in the region, right? There needs to be a voice that's spreading that message to the masses. And that's when it started off as a forum, and then eventually we become a publisher. And last 10 years has been the journey of that.
Great, Rakesh. And Rakesh, would you also like to talk about how was the journey of audience building from scratch, where there was nothing, so how did you decide that this audience is going to work? Did you decide at first, or did you experiment, and over the time like some learnings were there, and basis that you scaled?
So I'll be a little candid here, right? There's a lot of cluelessness in the AFK's journey for the first 4 to 5 years, right? we just knew that we had a core vision or a core philosophy that we need to spread, we need to be the guys who are taking the message of gaming to the masses, right? In terms of the audience, we didn't have a clear cut view, right? Like we were not as mature of a business as we are today, back in 2010, like 10 years ago. Our core principle was build it and they will come, and then we built it, and then we first started out with Dota, and then we saw some good reception. Back in the day, I think a lot of our traction came from social media. Like Facebook was really big back in the day, and then we got a lot of love from our audience on various social media platforms. And from there, it was slowly trying to fit the pieces of the puzzle together to find out, okay, you know what, if you're going to do this as a business, right, there needs to be a lot more focus, and there need to be a lot more efforts put into segmenting your audience, figuring out who wants what, and then two Dota users don't want the same thing, right? And then from there, slowly we chipped away little by little, trying to say that, hey, guide content is for this type of audience, news content is this type of audience. Some audiences just want gossip, and interviews are interesting for some audience. So that's how we kind of really found our path, I would say. We did a little bit of everything, and then from there we kind of doubled down on what worked, to a point where I think we are in a good place today, that we have a good mix of content across the board. And then we diversified from Dota. We started doing CS:GO coverage. Then when mobile esports started becoming a thing, then we expanded into mobile esports. So as and when the gaming industry matured, and the next generation of gamers came, they wanted different things, right? And staying on top of understanding what the user wants, what the user wants to consume, we slowly figured it out piece by piece. But it was not like a epiphany on day one. Okay, this is what we need to do, this is how we need to do it. It was a very slow and gradual process over 3 to 5 years.
Makes sense, Rakesh. So if I have understood it correctly, the focus was not so you have not started with the keeping audience in mind, but you kept game in mind, and then created various use cases for that audience over the time. You tested it, and once you found that okay, these things or these narratives are working better, you double down on those on those lines.
Absolutely. I mean, we started out as gamers, right? We didn't start out as businessmen. And as gamers, we went out like as purist as possible, right? Like we kept the game in the center of things, and we said that, okay, you know what? As gamers, we felt that this is what other gamers want, right? And we made a lot of mistakes along the way, right? We doubled down on a lot of things that the audience didn't really want. And then slowly, I think over 3 to 5 years, that mindset shifted from going from content first to audience first to consumer first. And then we started analyzing the data. There was a lot more emphasis on looking at analytics. And then we realized, okay, you know what, our internal biases or what we believe is supposed to be working is not always putting out the best results. Sure, that there are some punts we take which kind of pay off, but the focus on the audience was what kind of made the big shift from being a microscopic or a really, really small publisher to kind of a decent sized one that we are today.
Got it. And in my opinion, Rakesh, the journey of zero to first 100,000 users is the most difficult one.
Yeah.
So how was your journey? How did you scale this?
So yeah, I mean, I like I said, right, it was little by little, right? If I had to redo it all over again, I think that journey would be much faster, right? Like with what we know now, we could probably have achieved it in 6 to 8 months, right? But in the beginning, we kind of get the content in front of it. We said that, hey, Dota is really big in India, so let's kind of focus on Dota. And you have to keep in mind that on the back of all this, we're working with some really limited resources, right? We're not like a heavily funded startup or anything. So every decision that we made, we have to kind of keep in mind, how can we do this with little to no money? So with that in mind, with what limited writer, and a lot of our writers back in the day were either freelancers or people who just wanted to do this because they were passionate about the industry. So that with that in mind, right, we just started putting like little blocks of stones together until it became a formidable size, and then we had enough data to kind of analyze what's working, what's not working. It was I'll tell you the first, like you said, right, getting to the first 100,000 users, it was the hardest part, right? For the longest time, we were stagnated around 20,000, 30,000. There would be a one-off month where we do some coverage about some really happening event, and then we'd see big spikes of 50K, 70K, and we'd all be jumping up and down like, yes, we did it. I mean, it just seems so naive back now. I mean, it was cause for celebration back in the day, but it just seems like if we knew now what we knew, I mean, if we knew then what we know now, things would have gone a lot smoother. But that's the startup life, right? You're doing something for the first time, you're doing something you've never done before. Everything is new and scary, right? And then little by little we figured everything out.
So
Got it.
just to add some color around that, Ankit, we started off, like I mentioned, as a forum. The first thing we did to promote that forum was we picked up microphones and started commentating games that the community played. So that was one. We started doing this as a live stream, right? Now that live stream got us some viewers who then said, hey, what is AFK Gaming? Can we go check out the site and the forum? That was our journey from, I would say, 100 to 1,000 users. And then we had to replicate tricks like this all the way up to the first 100,000 users. So like Rakesh said, we did a lot of things, purely that stemmed from our knowledge of what gamers would possibly want to see in here. And that's kind of how we iterated over and over again and got to our first 100K users. And over time, we've gone from looking at, hey, how much traffic did we get in a month to how much traffic did we get in a week? And now we're looking at how much traffic are we at real time and can we optimize for them.
So Nishant, if I have to give you a choice to choose one channel, that can help teams who are building niche media to choose from. So which channel would you recommend to the budding media entrepreneurs?
That's a tough one, right? I think it would really depend on what genre of content you're doing or what region you're targeting. So to give you an example, for us, we categorize different game titles as separate brands altogether, right? So AFK Gaming Dota, for example, is a separate brand with its own identity. AFK Gaming Mobile Esports is another one. CSGO is another one. Now, within each of these games, we know that, for example, Dota has a larger audience in Southeast Asia. And in Southeast Asia, the preferred channel is social and more specifically Facebook. So it really boiled down to identifying which audience lives where and what social media or what channel works best for them. There's no one size fits all answer. I think it's largely about knowing your audience and understanding where they're consuming content outside or in other genres as well, and then trying to reach them and get your content in front of them over there.
Got it. Also, I'll stay on this 0 to 100,000 users journey, and we'll emphasize more on this. So Nishant, and what do you suggest, or from your experience, whether focusing on quality or quantity, like which one is a better proposition?
Again, I'd say that it depends largely on your business model. I don't think you can ignore one or the other entirely, right? But in a space where ad revenue is very hard to be your only source of sustainable income, quantity is probably not the best way to go. We realized that a long time ago that there's tons of people that can put out lots of stories in any individual genre, but there are very few that can actually add value to the end user or the reader, and that only comes from quality content. For us, it's always been a game of how many returning users can we get, how many loyal users can we get, who will eventually find enough value in AFK to say that, hey, I want to go one level deeper, whether that is through a subscription, which we haven't launched yet, but we might at some point, or whether they want to affiliate with the AFK brand, associate with the AFK brand a little more closely through merchandise purchases or something along those lines. So it's always been a quality focus for us. We don't believe that there's much value to be added by just doing generic large volumes of content. There's definitely got to be something that sets you apart from all the other publishers and UGC that you're essentially competing with out on the internet. So quality is the way to go for us.
Great, Nishant. And from quality, if we can move to the next level from acquisition, let's move to the engagement part. So engagement, I believe, is really difficult. You have to build a loyal audience. You have to build brand lovers over the time. People visiting you over and over again. So, how was your journey, so far to build brand lovers, and what do you think has actually translated your casual visitors into brand lovers?
A couple of things, right? One is so our content mix on the site is diverse, right? It's not just hey, a particular author will do SEO content, a particular author will do breaking news content. Each author has the freedom to explore all kinds of content, right? Now, what this does is it incentivizes your authors to one, chase traffic goals, which comes through a mix of volume and SEO content, and then also chase brand building as their own individual, as an author in the space, right? So they'll write exclusive interviews, they will chase breaking news stories, they will try and get exclusive stories that no one else is getting out there, which eventually adds to their reputation and by extension AFK's reputation. What this does is that over time, people start to associate that particular author with quality content, and therefore they keep coming back for their content rather than just saying that, hey, I saw this on my feed and therefore I'm going to click on it. So it's always been a question of, can we get each author to have their own individual persona and voice? And can that voice then be utilized in a way to make loyal users to both the author and the brand? Engagement has been a direct result of that, I would say. It's been rather than saying that you click on a story that showed up in your feed, you've also got people that are now saying, hey, this story has been written by so and so author, and therefore I should click on it and read it. Or maybe I go to afkgaming.com because I want to read what so and so author has written today. That's in a nutshell how we've tried to approach this.
Got it. And Nishant, we have, as you know, we have together tried to build the shareability factor in the content. So by design, if content can be written keeping shareability factor in mind, so would you like to talk about that as well?
Sure. So I think we've discussed this at length, right? You're writing for if you're writing for traffic, you're writing for two broad buckets, right? One is either you're writing for search traffic, which is useful content, utility-based content, guides, etc., or you're writing for someone to click through and say that, hey, this is something that caught my attention and therefore I'm going to do it. It's not intent-based, but it's something that showed up on a feed and then it caught your attention and you went through and clicked on it, right? The shareability factor, I would say, is largely a variable for the second half of that content. So your content that is written for Google Discover, for social media, it's something that we've taken quite, we've learned a lot about over the last few years. So everything from optimizing your titles to actually having an in-house design team that sits and optimizes each thumbnail or cover image for each story, right? This is something that we've taken very seriously for shareable content, for shareability of content. And unlike a lot of publishers, one of the approaches that we've taken is, we try and stay away from just using generic images on our stories. We actually have a design team that will, for almost every story, we will have a design team that will, one, source the image, to add some design to it, and three, add an AFK layer of branding on it. So we've now reinforced that message that, one, this is a piece of content that's come from AFK because of the branding, and two, the visual that goes along with each title is very relevant and very clickable and shareable. So it's kind of the approach we've taken to shareable content, optimizing titles and optimizing thumbnails and cover images. But beyond that, topic selection is something we leave entirely to the authors with a little bit of guidance from a supervising editor. We believe that authors know best of what's happening in their own individual spaces. It's very hard for us to, force our expertise into, let's say, a Dota writer or a CSGO writer. They are the ones that are on the ground. They've got the ear to the ground. We kind of rely on them and we trust them to find content that is most interesting for their readers.
Sure, Nishant. Quite interesting, and I think audience should also learn a lot from this part, that how you break the process and focus on shareability, and especially differentiation that comes with unique brand elements. I think that also helps in creating a long-term long-term perception and unique proposition about the brand. Maybe let's move to Rakesh a bit, and I would like to discuss about the product side of the things. So Rakesh, how has been your journey and evolution in terms of choosing the product stack for and technology stack for the for the business?
Okay, so first when we started out, we kind of, like I said, right, we were still figuring what to do with the website, with the technology, everything. So we kind of built our own custom website, and then we knew that if you're going to be a gaming publisher, right, somewhere very early in the journey, we figured out that we want to be a gaming publisher, and we knew that we knew what we didn't want to do, right? We didn't want to be a WordPress website. We didn't want to be another website. We wanted to stand out of the crowd, right? We wanted a website, that's custom, that has an AFK feel to it, and just sticking on a WordPress theme and then calling it a day wasn't the route we wanted to go. We knew we wanted custom, but we didn't know what it would look like or what it would feel like, and that's essentially for the last 5 to 6 years I've been working on, and those are the challenges I've been trying to solve, right? um, so how we started off with a custom website. We very naively tried to build our own CMS, and we succeeded in doing so. For about 3 years, we ran an operation with a custom built CMS, and things worked. Like everything was good. Like from a technical standpoint, the our stack was always a JavaScript stack, right? For those people, I'll just briefly touch upon the high level stuff behind the technology about the product. We had React in the front end, Node in the back end, and SQL for the database, right? And with these three elements, we were able to kind of build out an application which was quite robust, I would say. It was not very feature rich, but it got the job done, right? We were able to write articles, we were able to publish it, and we had a good custom front end, that which provided a reader with a moderate experience, I would say. It's nowhere close to what happened once we migrated to Quintype. And around 2017, 2018, right, we got access to a little bit more funds, and then we learned quite a bit about things about ourselves. And then whenever we said that, hey, we wanted to upgrade our custom CMS, we wanted XYZ features, we realized, okay, this is going to take quite a long time to build. And then this 3 months, 6 months development cycle happens, and then we realized, oh, by the time this period has passed, we have 10 other things that we wanted to build. And then we realized the costs of just building the CMS nonstop. We just went out and looked at what market solutions are there, and few things happened in parallel, and then we came across Quintype. We evaluated a few other CMSs, and Quintype felt like the right fit. And since that time, there's been no turning back. Right, we've been working with Quintype. The Quintype CMS has pretty much everything a publisher needs. Like it can take you from zero to pretty much as big as it goes. So once we kind of partnered up with Quintype, things were a lot more smoother, right? So the backend was taken care of, the infra is managed by Quintype. So the only thing we needed to focus was the problem that we set out in the beginning, right? How can we give a good custom experience to the reader, right? How can we build a cool website that stands out of the crowd on the internet, than the millions of websites on the internet? And essentially, directly or indirectly, when you're visiting a website, you are pegged against some of the best websites in the world, right? Irrespective of what content you're reading, the experience still resonates and carries on with the users, right? So you need to kind of be able to match up in terms of the reading experience and the user experience with every single website in the world. And yeah, that's what we've been doing. And the conscious decision to have different themes for each individual titles, pretty much every element on the page that you see today at afkgaming.com, it's been designed, deliberated, lot of front and back, and then those elements they are where they are today, and they will continue to evolve, right? Like very recently, like a couple of months back, we're having conversations within the team. Hey, we started this back in 2010, and we understand what the gamer of 2010 is like, but what is the next generation of gamer looking like? A lot of audience now is pretty young in age, and they're consuming content on their mobile phones, and we need to adapt, right? Like we cannot be, I mean, it's been a while since we've not been a desktop first experience, but as time evolves, being mobile first becomes more and more relevant, trying to cater to the younger audience, right? Like the founding team, we are in our 30s now, right? Like we need to be able to understand what the 18-year-old, 20-year-old gamers of today are thinking. How is it they're wanting to consume content? Clearly, with the advent of some social medias, the attention span of the reader has gone significantly down, right? So, and the consumption of video content has spiked up really high, but we still see, our numbers are still growing, and we primarily put out written content on the website. So there is an audience. So it's about marrying two ideologies together. Like, how do we cater to the younger audience? How do we cater to the newer generation of gamers who want to consume written content? And how do we still stand out of the crowd? And how do we still have a good brand positioning while doing all of this? So those are the challenges I have been tackling for a while now, and I continue to do so.
And Rakesh, you have been always a custodian of you reader experience over monetization, over
Yeah, big
revenues,
time,
over
big
anything
time.
else. So I think this is a fantastic ideology, and like we need more people like you in the founding team, or in the larger media teams. So maybe if you can share this ideology with the larger audience, I think it would also help keeping them focus on reader first
Yeah, I
approach.
feel that every company, right? Anytime you're building anything B2C, right, there needs to be one person who is hell-bent on caring what the user wants, right? There absolutely has to be. Like, if there are 2 founders, 3 founders, 4 founders, how many ever the key team is, there needs to be at least one person who cares about what the user wants. Now, fortunately or unfortunately, I have taken up that responsibility here. Um, and by doing so, you kind of ruin a lot of friendships along the way, because clearly other founders are like, where's the money? Let's put 12 more ads in this page, and let's put 4 pop-up ads, and let's do this, let's do that. It's all more revenue. I was like, yes, it's more revenue, but you want to build a core audience, right? You need to be able to visit AFK Gaming yourself, and when you close the site, hopefully you don't, but when you close the site, you walk away with the feeling that, hey, this was a good website, right? I definitely come back here again. And when you're trying to do all sort of stunts like this, right, you kind of chip away at the user experience. Like, on paper, everything looks good. Yes, more ads is more money. Let's send a pop-up after 15 seconds to collect their email. We can do so much with email. But you're getting their email, but you're never going to get their attention back. They're not going to come back to AFK. And there needs to be one person in every company. I mean, this is my personal firm belief, that there needs to be one person who cares about the customer. Like, within AFK Gaming, I have taken the responsibility of speaking on behalf of my readers, because I feel like the day you become irrelevant is not when the user has a bad experience. I think the day you become irrelevant is when the user stops caring about you. They come to AFK and they don't have any feelings when they leave the website. It's okay even if they're happy and they're like, okay, I had a good experience, but I think you become irrelevant when people stop caring about you. And it is somebody's responsibility, it should be, to ensure that that never happens.
Very, very valid point, Rakesh. And I am also, completely aligned principally with this. But I want to move to Nishant and want to understand, as a CEO, Nishant, how do you balance, the monetization side and the user experience side together?
Yeah, I think this really ties back to Rakesh's point, right? Like, while he's got his eye on the user, right? Our third co-founder, Siddharth, he's got his eye on the revenue coming in. And I've got my eye on one eye on this side, one eye on the other side. So it's really about, trying to, okay, so like Rakesh mentioned, we were not a very, very funded startup or anything, right? We've kind of found a way to survive on our own, and it's very difficult to do that in the media business. To do that, you have a bunch of options. One is, like Rakesh said, you could stuff a page with ads, ruin the user experience, and make the most out of each user that comes to the site. But that's a very short-sighted way of looking at things. It's unlikely that the user is going to come back and you'll be able to monetize them again, or retain their attention again. I think what we did is we found a nice middle ground, which is, while we figure out the right way to turn the site into self-sustaining machinery, can we put that knowledge that we have as content creators, as esports enthusiasts, to use for potential clients, right? And that's where Siddharth really picked up, I'd say he picked up the baton, and he sort of took the charge on that, where he's taken all of our skill sets and knowledge as AFK, turned that into a commodity or a monetizable product, and taken it out to the market, where we've now proven ourselves to be the go-to destination for any sort of content that people need on their pages as well. So we use that skill set to sort of find a middle ground while we balance user experience and monetization on the site. And now, as traffic grows and as our ad monetization gets a little more efficient without ruining user experience, we're finding ways to catch up on the B2C side as well. So it's like you said, it's a constant balancing act. We were fortunate enough to find an alternative revenue stream to buy us time to not be able to sacrifice user experience. And I think that's probably the playbook for every publisher out there, right? You probably need to find a way to survive and sustain until you have the scale and the right balance of user experience and monetization to be able to say that, hey, I'm a fully functioning publisher right now with a well-monetized B2C side without sacrificing user experience.
Right. And Nishant, so as you know that only ad revenues might not be sufficient to run even the editorial operations. So would you like to talk about the monetization model or different streams that you have experimented and what has worked, what has not worked?
Sure. So we have tried everything under the sun to make money as AFK, right? First, like Rakesh mentioned, we were a naive lot of people. We were not really business persons. We were just a bunch of gamers that said, hey, let's do content. And eventually, since everyone talks about ad monetization being so successful and bringing in so much money, we said, chalo, we'll run ads and we'll make money. This was the very 2010 way of thinking when you're a startup. But very quickly, we realized that, ad monetization is not necessarily for niche media. It's probably, you can probably do a few direct deals, you can probably do some sort of sponsorships, but if you want to turn this into a really scalable machinery, you need to have a sizable amount of traffic coming in. And in addition to a sizable amount of traffic, you also need to have a really strong sales proposition that sets you apart from traditional advertising channels, right? Like I said, we found a way to monetize through an agency model of sorts. So while you have authors, while you have video editors, while you have project managers that are all required to run a publication, those same skill sets can be packaged as a service for other folks in the industry that are not competing with your business. So for example, in our case, we work with tournament organizers, we work with teams, we work with brands. And essentially what we do is we use our content creation and esports domain expertise to package content and marketing strategies for them to utilize via their channels. In essence, we're saying, hey, we understand the esports audience, we understand how to do content creation. Let us put together and execute a content strategy for you to help you achieve your goals as a brand or as a team or as a tournament organizer. That's essentially the bridge that got us, time and I would say bandwidth to be able to think about how to turn a publication into a profitable business. I'm also personally a very big proponent of user monetization, right? I feel like the holy grail for any publisher is if you can create content and create a destination that is so good that people are willing to pay you money for it, you've reached the end game, right? We've seen a lot of brands do this successfully across the world in different genres. I think the front runner of this would be the New York Times when it comes to political and any sort of real, hard-hitting journalism. And then on the sports side, we recently saw The Athletic doing something similar. We're seeing a bunch of others like The Post coming up and doing similar content outside of just business and politics genres. We believe that there is a play to be made for user monetization for niche media as well. And honestly, in a space where your audience size is limited, there's only so many esports fans, there's only so many gamers that are going to consume written content in English. The ad monetization model may not be, it's definitely one pillar that you should use to support your business, but it's not necessarily the only pillar. You need to find a way to monetize either your skill set as well as your users directly. So we're big proponents of that being the next level of AFK. We monetize our skill sets, we monetize our page views. Can we now monetize our loyal audiences? Whether that's through subscriptions, whether that is through some other innovative means, that's a question for the future, but it's definitely something that we're thinking about now.
Got it. And Nishant, how about new monetization models? So let's say subscription could be one. I'll not call subscription a completely new model, but yeah, it could be considered as an additional way to monetize your audience. Maybe another discussion we had was around e-commerce model that like you have the very loyal audience, and let's say creating a marketplace of sort would also make sense monitor. And obviously in that case you will let's say if you're getting maybe $1 annually from your existing users, you may make it 5x, 10x very comfortably. So like what is your thought on those lines? Or let's say if you're restricting yourself, then what is the reason of restricting on in that direction today?
So there's definitely a lot of things to explore, right? Like you mentioned, the e-commerce model is one that that does make a lot of sense for publishers, right? Especially publishers like us that have a direct relationship with our readers. But we've done a lot of thinking about these things, and the question is, okay, we can enable e-commerce, but what do we sell? Are we going to sell someone else's products? If yes, why wouldn't people just go to an Amazon or a Flipkart and buy it from them? Are we going to sell AFK's own products? Do we have a large enough base of brand lovers to be able to do that today? So these are the kind of questions that we don't have convincing enough answers for to be able to dive into this head first. But at the same time, we understand that to get to any one of these solutions, whether that's e-commerce, subscriptions, or even pay-per-view for stories or for exclusive access, right? Step one is you need to have really good content on your site. Step two is you need to have a lot of loyal users consuming that content on your site. We are still at step one right now, and step three is then figuring out how to monetize it. So we're still thinking through step one at the moment. When we get to step 2 and 3, I think these questions become a lot more pertinent.
I'll add some context to what Nishant just said, right? Like back when we started 2010, 2012, like, once we were going to evolve from a forum into a publisher, right? We actually sat down and listed down all the things that we wanted to do, right? And then we listed down everything, like, we'll be a publisher, we'll be a TO, we'll make our own video games, we'll sell merchandise, and then we'll make movies, we'll make anime. And then we wrote down all these things on a piece of paper. And then when we started making plans and business models around this, it's like, oh no, we can't do these things. So I think one of the things that's worked very well for us, either by luck or by design, is that all three of us, Nishant, me, and Siddharth, agreed that we'll do one thing and we'll do it right. I think short while before Nishant said, the decision to switch to a subscription model is you need to be good enough. So the way at least we think about it is, so the first principle was there already, right? You need to do one thing and you need to be really good at it. Now, what is good enough? The good enough is obviously, internally we have several metrics like brand loyals, brand lovers, the amount of direct traffic, the number of returning users, and that will determine when we flip the switch to do, okay, we're really good at this. We can take this to the next level, right? And the next level of being a good enough publisher is you're able to monetize your audience. The next level from, like, once you're good enough at that, the next level of that is, let's do something else. Right now, this is a problem that we set out to solve. We solved it and we're successful, and if this keeps running as it is, it'll make us a lot of money. The second step is, okay, what e-commerce, rather than looking at e-commerce as an additional way to monetize the user, at least the way I think of it, it's a separate business vertical, because it has little to do with the publishing world or writing content about esports. And it comes with its own sets of challenges. And then we say that, hey, let's do a new vertical where we're doing e-commerce, and then we'll see how the publishing side and the e-commerce side can draw synergies from one another. So there are a lot of good enough checkpoints that we need to cross before we think about e-commerce. That's the thinking here.
Got it, Rakesh. And yeah, very, very interesting perspective to focus on one area first, and then build it completely, and then move to other areas. So completely makes sense. Also, would like to understand the analytics side of the thing from both of you. That like, how has been your journey in creating, let's say, the editorial side of the analytics, marketing side of the analytics, and what do you suggest to the budding entrepreneurs, especially when they are starting the business, that should they focus on analytics from starting, or how does it should work for them?
You want to start with this, Nishant?
Yeah, sure. So I think a while ago, Rakesh Sid and I were having a conversation about something very similar, right? And Rakesh put it quite astutely. I would say that we are data aware, not necessarily a data first or a data driven publisher. To be data driven, we think that we've got a long way to go. We've got a lot more we've got a lot of data on our hands that we just don't understand how to analyze today. And when we're not able to turn those into actionable insights. And I think that's the dilemma of every small publisher, right? The moment you plug in a tool as simple as Google Analytics, you're flooded with so much data that you're not really sure what to be able to do with it. At a very surface level, everyone looks at page views, everyone looks at users. But then when you start diving a little deeper, right, when you start making custom segments, when you start generating your custom reports, you realize, wow, this tool is actually a lot more powerful than I initially thought. We've always been, we've tried to have data guide a lot of our decisions. But, at least personally, I'm a big believer of following your instincts and your intuition as well. I feel like data is one tool that helps you make better instinctual decisions. And the fact that, I don't think it's fair to say that, you can use data to discount years of knowledge and experience that you've got on the ground in a particular industry, right? If I were to give some sort of piece of advice to upstart publishers, right, I think definitely look at data as one of many tools that you have, but don't let data be the only decision-making tool that you use in your skill set, right? There's a lot of times when the data is just, it's telling you something, but your audience wants something entirely different. And especially when you try to analyze data from subjective sources like comments or users responses in surveys, a lot of time, the customer either doesn't know what they want, or there's a vocal minority that's asking for things like super investigative journalism and extremely deep dive content, but that is only for the vocal minority, and it's not necessarily going to turn your business into self-sustaining one. So I think you've got to find that balance between trusting the data and trusting yourself.
Yeah, so to add on to that, right, I feel like the way to look at data is, if you're going to make any reliable decisions based on data, right, you need to look at the data deep enough. For example, if you observe that in a 3-month period, a specific segment is doing well, or a specific category, or even a single story is doing really well, like you look at the analytics, the page views and the engagement metrics will be right at your face, right? You won't struggle too hard to find this information. What happens then is, if you're able to explain with data why it did well, that's when you're able to validate your beliefs, right? If you're able to say that a category did well and you're not able to explain with data, I mean, it can't be a subjective feeling that, hey, you know what, if I cover XYZ topic, it'll do well, and then the data says it did well, that's it kind of borders towards a confirmation bias, right? You need to be able to explain with data, or at least to a large degree, you need to like drill down 2-3 levels deeper into the data to understand why it did well. So that is the first facet of looking at data. I mean, especially if you're starting out, right? Don't just look at data and say, hey, this did well, without being able to explain why did this well, why did this well. The second thing is to be able to replicate that success. If you're confident that you looked at the data, you looked at it 3-4 levels deep, and then you're able to say that this piece of content or this category or this campaign of mine did well because of XYZ reasons, can you do it 3, 4, 5, 10 more times and replicate that success? If you're able to do that, that is when you are truly taking data driven decisions. If you have a lot of times I read across articles and I even listen to others people speak when they say that, hey, we are data driven and we're data this and we're data that. It's just that there's a lot of circumstances that leads content to do well or leads content to do poorly that the data is not clearly explaining. It's either due to a lack of looking at data deep enough, or it's it's other factors other than what you had initially imagined. So if you're not able to replicate it, that means the data is just the data is not lying, right? It's just that you've not looked at the other data points, or you've not looked at the data deep enough to make meaningful insights out of that. So I'd say the biggest litmus test for when you're looking at data and making decision is if you're able to replicate success. That for me is a big thing. And apart from that, I think Nishant covered the other 2 points that I wanted to make, right? Be data aware and not data driven. Like data is a tool that helps you to make decisions, but you're not making decisions solely on the data.
Yeah, analysis paralysis is also not not suggestive. Yes, with you on that. Nishant and Rakesh, and what do you suggest? Like let's say if the expert, if some expertise is not there internally in the team, do you think that those expertise should be outsourced, or do you think that the capabilities should be built internally over the time?
I think that's a direct factor of how much money you have to work with, right? To put it very bluntly, if you can afford to do everything in-house, sure, consider doing that. But in the real world, money is a finite resource, and even more so for publishing companies. It's probably best to just focus on two things as a publisher, right? One is the content that you're creating, and of course that comes with its own extended focus areas like audience needs and wants, etc. And the second is the consumer experience, right, which is the technology side of it and the product side of it. Everything else is probably best to just be outsourced to experts that are doing this as a day job, as a living, right? I think, if I were to jump back to the discussion about technology, there was a time when we thought, hey, why don't we just build everything in-house? And very, very early on, we realized that, it would be a lot more efficient if we just took the help of experts like Quintype and managed to, and utilize our bandwidth to optimize and push the envelope a little more when it comes to user experience, while someone like Quintype handles all the tech heavy lifting on the back end, right? Similarly with you guys, right, with Meduit, we had an option to try and set up in-house SEO teams, in-house performance marketing teams, in-house data analysis teams, but all of that would have been so expensive. We'd probably have to do a fundraise or make some crazy bonanza sales to be able to afford all of that anyway. You guys have commoditized that, you guys have productized that, and you come with years of experience doing this, right? We would be foolish to not lean on your expertise, and similarly not lean on the expertise of folks like Quintype when they're experts in their domains. Definitely a big proponent of, to summarize, I'm definitely a big proponent of outsourcing to the experts. And eventually, for critical areas, for critical areas that your businesses cannot function without, consider finding a way to enhance them.
Yeah, I think it's also important to add the flavor about working in a startup, right? Like generally in big businesses, they have a tendency of doing core business in-house, and then all the support and auxiliary functions are outsourced. This is very largely, I'm just generalizing here or overgeneralizing here. But when you're a startup, right, you don't even know all the elements of your core business, right? Like I would consider like writing content, managing a website and the associated marketing and sales along with it to be the core business of a publishing website, right? Now, even between these three elements, there were large gaps of knowledge and understanding within our team, and it's not that we couldn't invest time and figure it out, but in a startup, time is also as valuable a resource as money, right? Now, does it make sense for us to like invest 3 months, 6 months, 9 months into setting up data teams, optimizing them, and then making sure that those problems are solved in-house? Or does it make sense to kind of rely on experts who've done this for tens of years, and lean on them to kind of augment the there's like a core business, which is the writing the content, the marketing and the technology, and then there's the really core business, which is the content and the audience, right? Now we kind of redefined the core business into such a small piece that we say that, hey, let the experts worry about the other things, and along the way we learn these skill sets and kind of be able to help ourselves if it's needed. And by doing so, we've kind of struck some wonderful partnerships, like Nishant was saying, with Quintype and with Meduit. And those are the people now, those are our go-to people whenever we have technology problems or whenever we have marketing problems or data problems. We work collaboratively with you guys, and then we find solutions to problems. And that's how, we move forward every time.
Great, Rakesh and Nishant. So, last piece of it before we move to the question and answer session. Last piece of advice you want to share with founders who are building niche media. So, Rakesh, first, let's start with you.
Oof. And I'd always say keep your. I mean, this is obviously because that's my role here. I say keep your customer in the center of the focus. Because the customer is what's going to make or break your business, right? Like you can believe that you have built a really cool product, you believe that you have a really cool offering, but if in the end the customers don't take, there's only so much. I mean, it's just your belief in the end of the day, right? The proof is in the pudding, they say, right? So I'd say my fundamental, like, go back and read like a graduation level marketing. I think all the knowledge is already there. Like read a Kotler textbook, right? I think no one says is better than him. If you do the basics right, and if you keep the customer at the center of things, you you I mean that's like 70% of the problem solved. That's what I'd say. That's one biggest
Okay.
takeaway for me.
Great. So customer centricity is what Rakesh says. And what about you, Nishant?
I agree with Rakesh, but just to add on to that, right? Specifically for publishers, know who your customer is. Um, and this is it's counterintuitive, but your customer is not necessarily just your reader. It's also the person that's opening their wallets and giving you money, right? So that in many cases is possibly an advertiser or a white label content partner that you've got on board. So it's always about as a publisher servicing two separate sets of customers. One is making sure your readers are happy, who will eventually turn into your paying customers. And then the second is make sure that you're delivering value to brands and to advertisers on the back of these customers that are already been kept happy. So yeah, that's
Right.
that.
You serve two customers that way. One
Very
are
much.
your readers and second are your sponsors.
Very much.
Makes sense. Okay, so we are moving to the questions, and we have first question here, which says, so how do you make a balance between traffic? Google has opened new avenues like Google Discover is there, Google Search, News, and there are multiple channels that Google has opened. So how is your content strategy aligned to service all these different platforms that Google has?
So I think I touched upon this a little earlier, right? You're writing for essentially two buckets of content consumers. One is people that have an intent to find something, so they're searching for how do I fix this problem in a game, or which team won this tournament, or so and so, right? So that's content with an intent to find an answer, which means that you're writing utility-based content, things like guides, things like responses, things that will essentially show up in a Google snippet and then encourage someone to go a little deeper. And then the second side of it is content that the consumer didn't know they wanted, but now that they've seen a bit of it, they want to go deeper into it. So that is your content that's found via Discover, via social feeds, and via Reddit posts and so on and so forth. So I think just keeping that in mind, that there's two big buckets of content consumers that you need to service allows you to build a strategy around each one, right? So you could have certain resources dedicated towards writing for high intent consumers, and then you could have another set that are on the ground trying to find breaking news and interesting content. That's essentially how we look at it in a nutshell from these two lenses.
Got it, Nishant. Anupam, shall we take more questions, or how do you suggest?
We can wait for some more questions in case they come up. So we can wait for a few minutes probably.
Sure, let's do that.
Actually, I'd like to hear from you, Ankit. I mean, you worked with several niche media brands yourselves, right? And then you asked us the question, what's the one takeaway for a new niche media builder to kind of take away from? What would be your answer to that same question?
Rakesh, to me, I think focusing on your audience, knowing your audience, is the key. So if you and I mean, you can start with a hypothesis that let's say this is my audience, and over the time you write content like exactly like you guys did. I think that's the best way to start, where you define a broad level audience. That okay, let's say this is the demography, this is the interest level audience that we have, and start from there. Throw some content, throw some features, products, etc., etc., and test that what is working, where people are responding. Very important to keep your like goal intact. So you should have your success metric defined, that whether it is, let's say, whether it will be CTR, whether it will be page views, whether it will be repeat audience, and so on. Very important to have that goal post in mind. And once you have that, I think this strategy of keeping goal in place, keeping audience on the other side, and bridging this gap in between, and doing it continuously over the course of let's say 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, I think will give you the will definitely give you the idea on the product market fit. So in my opinion, this product market fit and in parallel concept market fit are the two things that that a media entrepreneur should focus initially, and obviously they will also have to fix the monetization bit in parallel. But in my opinion, these two are completely different problems altogether. So right now I am focusing only on the PMF side of the thing.
Interesting. I mean, yeah, I think you speak to any founder who has spent years building a startup, they would all default to, the audience answer. But yeah, I think the product market fit concept, I mean, I agree with pretty much everything that you said, right? Like having a good fit is directly a result of having a good product for your audience. And then the next piece of puzzle to solve is, how are you going to make money out of this, right? You have some money to burn, but at some point you need to start making money as a business. Yeah, so I agree with your points there.
Yeah, and initially, I think for monetization, you can choose the audience accordingly. So let's say, theoretically, the audience which has the highest CPM in the market can be your audience. Uh, and obviously on the other side, the size should also be decent enough. I mean, if it is like if your TAM, total addressable market, is in a few thousands, it doesn't make sense. So it has to be a couple of million, at least a couple of millions, large wide audience on one place, and then so that you also take you also take some time to reach out to 100% of the time over the time.
True.
So I think we have question from Udbhav. Okay, let's take this. With the younger generation's attention now shifting to content consumption habits like short videos and short form content, so how do you think will be the overall impact on websites that are currently writing long form content, like detailed articles? How do they adapt to it?
All you, Nishant.
Uh,
Let's start. Okay, so
yeah.
I think this same question came to me first 2 years back, and then very recently, right? And then I brought it up in an internal team call, and then I said, hey, you know what? We've all been gamers back in the day, but do we understand what the gamers of today are doing? Like, who are they watching? What are they playing? What content are they consuming? I mean, it's going to feel like, saying the same thing over and over again. But to answer Udbhav, right, it's trying to understand, what the 18-year-old of today, what the 22-year-old of today is doing on the internet, right? What are they playing? If they're watching, like, why do certain content creators, be it live streamers or YouTubers, why do they pop off, right? Like, why do they become so successful? What is the success formula in their content, right? In the video, and what piece of their content is appealing to the younger generation? And there are definitely some takeaways that you take from short form content, video content, live content. There is some personality element or some branding element or some success factor over there that kind of translates to things across the internet. Like, it's not just social media that's blowing up. Like, you see massive audiences even in sites like Reddit, right? And where there's little to no video content, but you see these sites also having a large number of users who are constantly engaging and discussing things in text format. And you see publishers also growing, like, who are writing short form content or long form content. And to kind of directly appeal to this audience, we just need to find what's working with the audience of today. And if that is your audience, even if the 18 to 24 demographic is your audience today, we need to have a good understanding of what is it that excites them, what is it that's interesting for them. Because, like, gamers, we understand that different parts of their gaming journey have different pain points, and a lot of times, that they're googling for solutions, right? Like, how do we get on top of those Google search pages? And then once we bring them to the site, how do we engage and retain them? Those, like, studying those things more in depth, more in detail, understanding what those users are doing will kind of help us crack the puzzle.
Yeah, just to add on to that, I think content creation is an extension of communication, right? So some things can be communicated through a tweet or a short form video. Other things cannot be communicated unless you write paragraphs or lengthy articles about them. I think each bit of communication has its own place, has its own style of being distributed to the masses. And just like, when you're in a work group, sometimes a WhatsApp message suffices. Other times you need to send a long email to get your point across. I think that still will apply to content, regardless of age, regardless of what generation is consuming it, right? So I definitely think that a lot of the content that used to be created as stories, as written stories, can now be served as video content, and especially now that video content is a lot easier to consume due to technological improvements. But at the same time, there are certain things that are best communicated through an article or through a written story, and that's never going to go away.
Jen, yeah, I think, and Nishant, just to add to you, to your point. So here, I think, the entire media consumption pattern is shifting. So earlier, long form content was working really well, but I think now the generation is moving towards capsules or, things that are written only for me. So even like customization, personalization within the same piece of content. So even I think the latest trend that I am seeing, and even like myself being a heavy content consumer, that I am even looking at angles. So if there is an information and that information has 20 angles to look at, so I would just like to look at those 2 or 3 angles that make sense to me. And I think the next generation is going to be where you are solving the angles from the same information. So information is going to be there, but who is going to curate, who is going to define those angles are going to own the audience, and it is going to break into very, very small cohorts over the time, but the value would increase, and I think that's where next 4-5 years are going to be. So fantastic, and really appreciate both of you for keeping your time out today and talking to us, talking to me, talking to our audience, and sharing all your experiences. And I know it is very difficult to put your 10 years journey in an hour session, but I think we all have found really, really insightful insightful content from this session, and looking forward to have many more such sessions with both of you. So thank you Nishant, thank you Rakesh, thank you lovely audience for this session, and we will meet you in January too. All right.
Sure. Thanks,
Awesome.
everyone.
Thank you for having us. Bye.
Thanks.